Okay, so 9.3 is deciding if a quadrilateral is a parallelogram. Okay, there are gonna be several rules, there's only really one example. Parallelogram opposite sides theorem converse. Because yesterday we did parallelogram opposite sides theorem, right? This is the converse of it?
Yes.
Okay. If both pairs, well, we did it one of the 2 days, yes. If both pairs of opposite sides of a quadrilateral are congruent, then the quadrilateral is a parallelogram. So if AB and CD are congruent, and then AD and BC are congruent, then ABCD is a parallelogram. So this is to prove that it's a parallelogram. The other ones that we learned earlier were it's a parallelogram, therefore these sides are congruent, yes? This is this a parallelogram? Prove it, type thing, okay? Parallelogram opposite angles theorem converse says, if both pairs of opposite angles of a quadrilateral are congruent, then the quadrilateral is a parallelogram. So if A and C are congruent and B and D are congruent, then ABCD is a parallelogram. Yesterday we talked about when it's a parallelogram, I know the opposite angles are congruent. I also know that the adjacent angles had to be what?
180.
Good.
Fancy.
It's just the rules in reverse today, backing it on up.
Don't you wish you could just like copy and paste like on paper?
You
Yes.
can print them
You
out.
can, she prints them ahead of time most of the time.
What?
Chloe prints them ahead of time most of the time.
Yes.
900 times this year I have said, go to amsco.com, go on to that learning activities, all of these are up there, print them
And they have
ahead of
videos
time.
that you can watch if you don't understand what
I would print them, but writing it down makes.
Yeah, that's fine, if that's how you.
Or
I mean,
I
like,
somehow I write them
no,
out in
like-
advance. a lot
Yeah.
of
No,
times.
because you're writing it.
No, like writing
It goes
it
on
down.
autopilot and then you simply
Like-
stop while you're doing it.
No, you
That's
have
what
to
you
do
do on a
some, you have to do
computer.
something in your life, Alex.
I know, but like where it says paragraph opposite sides theorem converse.
Oh my gosh, Alex shows work, didn't know it did that.
Are you about ready, Alex?
Dang, bro, y'all really just
Oh,
cooking them
Chloe,
right here.
I'm not gonna
Don't
say
be
nothing.
rude, cause we
Yeah,
can go
don't
at
say
you.
anything, Alex.
Yeah.
No,
I
it's
was
just really
about to
funny.
say
I
something.
just use, I beat Alex to be a cracker.
And then
Okay,
you told
are we ready to move on?
Chloe shut up.
Read
Chloe told
forward.
Alex to pull out today.
That was.
Talking about trivia crap.
Okay, next one is the parallelogram supplementary angles theorem converse. Yesterday, because it's supplementary
We like-
angles.
Put P
That's what I'm
S A T C.
Caleb,
Okay,
why are you asking?
Well, I'm just like,
No.
you
Draw
know,
pictures like I do.
yeah, I always draw pictures.
Pictures are the only thing.
If
that
all
matter.
angles in a quadrilateral are supplementary to their consecutive angles, then the quadrilateral is a parallelogram. So if A and B add to be 180, and B and C add to be 180, and C and D add to be 180, and D and A add to be 180, you got yourself a parallelogram. So Chloe, we learned the same thing yesterday, but in reverse. When it's a parallelogram, these rules apply.
Okay,
Here
so
is.
just saying if these rules apply, then
Then
it's
it's
a
parallelogram. Mhm. Correct.
Yeah.
So remember on your test or quiz, okay, if it's asking you to prove something's a parallelogram, you have to throw the word converse in there for me,
Okay.
okay? If it's asking that to prove angles or sides are congruent, then it's just a straight up theorem. Got it?
Nice.
Converse means I'm working in reverse.
That makes it easier to remember, because you just have to remember all the converses are to prove it as a parallelogram.
Yes.
And then all the others is to prove that the parallelogram is.
But like things are equal, sides and parts are equal.
I would have like a sin and tangent thing like we had up there on our quiz.
Possibly. It's free game from now on. It's been on, you've tested over it.
Yeah.
Do I have to take the quiz more?
How many days were you not here?
One.
Yes. I'm telling you, this is the same lesson as yesterday's.
It's just backwards.
I'll watch the video online.
I will be here tomorrow morning.
You will.
Okay.
Oh, I have to get, well, I have to get here early to set up.
Parallelogram, right, me too.
Woo.
Parallelogram, diagonals, theorem, converse.
My hands are getting.
There's so many.
If the diagonals of a quadrilateral bisect one another, then it's a parallelogram. So if AE is congruent to EC and DE is congruent to EB, you got yourself a parallelogram.
Oh, that's wrong.
Okay, we also learned this rule, I think, on Monday though, yes? When it's a parallelogram, they bisect each other.
I wonder what the people on Fixer Upper like use all the time.
No, they don't.
They don't.
Because they don't do this anymore.
Parallelogram and
Now they
quadrilateral
have a furniture
theorem.
company.
Okay, this one's different. This is a different theorem. Notice how this is the only one that's not a converse. Let me point that out to you. Okay? Parallelogram and quadrilateral theorem. If one pair of sides of a quadrilateral is congruent and parallel, then the quadrilateral is a parallelogram. So you can have that little bit of information. You don't have to have all this information to prove it's a parallelogram. You can literally know that the opposite sides are parallel and congruent, then you've got yourself a parallelogram. Okay? So there's several ways I can prove stuff is a parallelogram. I can prove it by their adjacent angles all adding to be 180. I can prove it by their diagonals are congruent. I can prove it by one set of sides are parallel and congruent. And I can prove it by, what was the other one?
There's two angles.
Yeah, the opposite angles are congruent.
And then
Or I can
consecutive
prove it
ones are
by the
congruent.
sides are congruent to each other, opposite sides, right? Okay. Woo, I got lots of ways to prove these things are parallelograms.
So
That's
to
not good.
prove that two angles are parallel, you have to figure out the slope, right?
Maybe. Or they tell you it's parallel, or you have things like a transversal cut in there, or
I don't
something.
And you can use one of the theorems from before. which
Yes,
is
oh,
the
always.
Transgender.
Okay, give you a few more seconds, then we'll do the one example, and then I will give you some homework.
Oh, yeah.
I know, that's your favorite part.
Is there, are there ever quizzes or it's just
Heck no, I don't do quiz videos.
no, like in
I
the
gotta
book?
take this one.
Oh,
No.
no.
I mean, if you just do the first part of the lesson.
Okay, quadrilateral parallelogram theorem come first. Is this quadrilateral a parallelogram? What does x equal?
Okay, we can find out it's a parallelogram if we set, no.
Why don't we set
Add
R and O
S
together
and G together,
and
angles,
equal them?
and then
180.
equal 180.
Okay, we can do it that way. We can say 8x minus 30, right?
Yes.
And we can say
Plus
2x plus 10.
2x plus 10
Is equal.
equals,
180.
okay,
So
so
10x,
10x
minus 20
minus 20,
equals 180 plus 20.
16.
200 divided by
That's-
20.
Never
x equals
mind.
20.
I
Plug it
did
back
the wrong thing.
Oh,
okay?
then
Plug,
you
you have
can
to
plug
plug
it
it
back
back into 2x,
150.
and you can plug it back into 8x minus 30.
So 40 plus 10 is 50.
Oh, you have to.
160 minus 30 is 130.
8 and 160?
Yeah, 160 minus 30. So 130 plus 50. Yeah, that equals 180.
Yes. So
Okay.
x equals 20 and that's the.
And why did I know that I could add those together and be 180? Because do I know off of looking at that it's a quadrilateral?
Yeah,
Why?
you can use
The two
parallel
opposite sides
because
are
there's
equal.
The two
What?
parallelogram
Two
supplementary
opposite sides
angles
are
theorem converse.
What, well, not sides, the two opposite
Angles.
angles are congruent. Because that says 8x minus 30 and that says 8x minus 30, this says 2x plus 10 and that says 2x plus 10, I can then do this problem. I can't just assume that I can jump into that problem. Do you see what I'm saying? So on your homework, you gotta pay attention, because if one of those things has a different number or letter or variable to them, you can't do it, okay? That's not possible, and when it says what does x equal, you'd say not possible, because it's not a quadrilateral. Cool?
So you can just say not possible.
If it's not
If it's not
possible.
possible.
You almost say when it is possible, you be that kind of person.